Hey everybody, this is Jacqueline Lukeman, and this is live at 6 now in Lukeman Nation. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm actually trying to find you on our page so I can check out your comments while I'm talking to you. You have to forgive me because I'm recuperating a little bit today. I was involved in a car accident Saturday, and I'm sore, and I'm okay. A little bit banged up, but everything's all right. I guess you guys can hear me. Hey Dolores, hey Aaron, thanks for joining me. So I'm a little bit tired. I'm a little bit worn out today, but it's been so long since we've been on. And I really needed to come on and have a chat with you guys about all of this stuff that's been going on. Because, oh my gosh, hasn't it been ridiculous? So let's start with the obvious big story, and that is the Seth Rich story. Now, Fox 5 DC, which is a local Fox affiliate here in the city where we live, Washington, D.C., reported that an investigator, a private investigator for Seth Rich's family, reported that he has confirmed a link between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks, saying that Seth Rich did contact WikiLeaks before his death. There are a couple of badly reported facts that go along with that story. First of all, the private investigator who reported this to the press wasn't hired by the family. He's not really, he's not really the investigator for the family. He was hired by a third party. So he's not really the family's private investigator. Hey Kenny, thank you very much. I'm good. The accident was very terrifying, and I will never drive without a seatbelt. I always did before, but I'll never do it now. So this guy, this private investigator who has reported this thing to the media, was not hired by the family. So the family is saying through this, I just found out through this spokesperson, who is actually this creepy DNC operative. So who even knows what's going on with that? But the private investigator is actually not hired directly by the family. The private investigator was hired by a third party, and the third party wasn't revealed in the report on Fox 5 News's website, but this private investigator services was paid for by someone else, and his services were presented to the family, were offered to the family. So this guy is a retired DC police detective, I think. And I'm not saying that this story is not true. Let me make that really, really clear from the beginning. I am not at all saying that this man hasn't found a connection between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks. I'm not at all saying that Seth Rich wasn't the person who leaked the emails. He didn't hack into anything. He leaked the emails from the DNC to WikiLeaks, because Julian Assange, if you remember, I think it was last year, published an article saying that, well, the articles, the emails came from a source within the DNC. The servers weren't hacked. They were given to WikiLeaks by someone inside the DNC. That person may well have been Seth Rich. The other thing that is incorrect about what people are saying about this story and the way this story is being picked up by people is that there has been proof provided that Seth Rich is the inside source of WikiLeaks. Now, again, I am not saying that Seth Rich isn't the source. I am not refuting the absolute possibility and probability that he is the source. What I am saying is that this private investigator said that he would produce evidence of his of the connections he found, but he hasn't produced that evidence yet. Why am I saying all this? Because I know some of you are like, oh my God, it sounds like you're denying the story. No, what I want us to do as progressives, as independent voters, and as intellectual people, is to tell the whole story. Right? That is what I want us to do. I don't want us to keep grabbing on to headlines and running with headlines saying, oh, this is the proof that we need. There's no proof yet. There's this guy who is not an official private investigator for the family. He wasn't hired by the family. He was hired by a third party. His services were offered to the family. He says he has found a connection between Seth Rich and the DNC. He said that he would provide this proof at a later date. He hasn't provided this proof yet. Not saying none of this is true. I'm just saying these are the facts in the story that people are leaving out. It is also true, apparently, that the person who is the spokesperson who came out and said on behalf of the family that that they don't agree with this private investigator's report is a DNC operative. That is also true. So who knows what the family really feels about what this guy has to say, because when I first heard it, I thought that the statement from the family came directly from the family, but I'm seeing reports and articles saying that it's this person who is a well-known DNC operative who's making these statements on behalf of the family. Perhaps he is still trying to keep a lid on this. I am one of those people who I am not going to jump and seize on the first headline that comes out that validates my suspicions. Even if it's really good and really juicy, and I know that a lot of people are talking about this today and are saying that, look, this guy, he's proven that Seth Rich is the source. He actually hasn't proven anything. Again, I don't know. I feel like I just have to keep saying this. I am not saying that Seth Rich is not the source. I am saying that we need to stop saying that there is irrefutable evidence that has been produced from this Fox 5 News report from this guy. Because there hasn't been. I'm just saying we need to be really, really careful with our information. That's all. That just don't just repeat headlines. Report facts. Because I see what a lot of people do is they'll share an article on their social media timeline that confirms what they believe. It's called confirmation bias, right? We see something that confirms what we think and we go with it. And a lot of times people just don't even read the article to see the content. And everything I just told you is actually in the article on Fox 5 DC's website. And of course, I'm going to give you the link to the article so you can read it for yourself. Don't believe me. I always tell you, don't believe what I say just because I say it. That's why I give you all of these links to go through for yourself so you can see for yourself. So, look, I am hoping that this Seth Rich story and the information this guy has is valid. I am hoping that he does provide proof. Because I absolutely want to see this Russia narrative just shut down. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of this ridiculous idea that Russia was involved in hacking the DNC servers to curry favor for Donald Trump so that Trump could win. That, to me, invalidates all of the issues that progressive voters and independent voters brought up that we had with Hillary Clinton's track record. That the idea that Clinton didn't win to Trump because Russia was involved in hacking the DNC emails and swayed public perception against Hillary Clinton just completely ignores once again every issue we brought up with Clinton and her disastrous record as far as domestic policy is concerned and foreign policy. I mean, hey Sandy, how are you? Thanks for joining. I mean, just the idea that people are still talking about Russia hacked the election and caused people to think badly of Hillary Clinton. I can't imagine what Haitian people. Do you remember the coverage I did at the DNCC in Philadelphia in July? Excuse me, pollen is really high here and I've got the sneezes. Excuse me. Remember the coverage I did at the DNCC in Philadelphia in July? And remember the group of Haitian immigrants who were protesting at the DNCC against Hillary Clinton because of her dealings with Haiti as Secretary of State and through the Clinton Foundation? How do you think the Haitian people feel about a bunch of people in American mainstream media blaming Russia for turning the American public's opinion against Hillary Clinton, when the Haitians have been sitting over there for years screaming about how Clinton and the Clinton Foundation and their lackeys have been raping that country for years? That completely just craps on the suffering that those people have endured at the hands of Hillary Clinton. And it craps on the fact that we brought that to light in this past election because, Russia made people hate Hillary Clinton, not the fact that Hillary Clinton actually did horrible things. And those of us in the progressive and independent circles brought those horrible things to light. I love the fact that people began to educate themselves on who Hillary Clinton really was. See, because for me, growing up over here in Southeast DC and seeing what mass incarceration and the militarization of police and how democratic policies didn't help us, and how the crime bill destroyed our community. I've hated Hillary and Bill Clinton since Bill was president. You understand? So it was gratifying to me to see so many people finally understand who these people really were. And we're sitting there on social media using it for what it could be used for, with the power behind it, educating millions of people around the world, across the country, around the world, about policy, about the effects of policy, about the intentions behind policy. I got to calm down because my head is starting to hurt. My doctor told me to take it easy, and I'm trying not to be stubborn because I am so stubborn. So, it was gratifying to me to see so many people who didn't live this experience, because outside of our communities, if you didn't live here, you didn't know what happened. You didn't know what the crime bill did. You didn't know, you didn't see the connection. Right? So it was gratifying to me to see people talk about Bill Clinton's Welfare Reform Act. Not that all black people are on welfare, but we've got a sizable percentage of the black population that is on welfare. And I watched people who were working and who needed assistance get kicked off of assistance. And then as a result of not being able to feed their kids, ended up having to choose between rent and food. I mean, this isn't like made up stuff. This is stuff that we lived. And this is stuff that we lived under Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. Because remember, it was Bill Clinton who said that, look, when you get me, you get 2 for 1. You get Hillary too. So for the DNC and anybody else to continue to push this narrative that it's Russia's fault that Trump won and not Hillary Clinton's fault for her horrible policies, for her horrible, disastrous, destructive, neoliberal policies. If they're pointing at Russia and not blaming the DNC for scuttling the campaign of a viable contender in Bernie Sanders, in colluding with the media to black that man's campaign out so that most of the country didn't even know who Bernie Sanders was, didn't know what he stood for, didn't know what he was offering. Donna Brazile admitted to that. She admitted to feeding questions to the campaign that the media was going to... Well, I mean, that's an unfair advantage. Debbie Wasserman Schultz was relieved of her position as DNC chair. The New York City DNC election chair was suspended for illegally purging hundreds of thousands of voters from the rolls in New York City. We're not making this stuff up. And right now, the DNC is defending itself very badly in court. Well, actually, I think arguments have ended and the judge is deciding right now. But we talked about we talked about the DNC's defense. And speaking of talking about the DNC's defense, an amazing thing happened today. Newsweek published an article on the DNC lawsuit. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? A mainstream media outlet actually reported on the lawsuit that the DNC is involved in, that the rest of mainstream media is acting as if doesn't exist. For the mainstream media to ignore this lawsuit speaks volumes to me. I really believe now. I try not to. What's the word? Prognosticate. I don't. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know that when you stand in front of somebody and tell a judge that, look, you can't make me abide by my own legally binding charter because you can't define the words fair and I think you're kind of in trouble when you tell a judge that he can't make you do what's legal because he can't define the words fair and impartial and unbalanced. I think you're kind of in trouble when you go into court and you admit that, well, listen, we're not really a public organization. I don't know why people believe that. We're a private organization. And because we're a private organization, we have no reason, we have no obligation to abide by our charter. And because we have no obligation to abide by our charter, well, we don't have to be fair and impartial. We don't have to be impartial in our candidate, in supporting our candidate. I mean, we don't have to be, but we were. I kind of think when you go to court and you sort of, in a backhanded way, admit that if you really wanted to, you could lie and cheat people, but you didn't really lie and cheat people, I kind of think you might be in trouble. Not a judge, not prognosticating, not trying to figure out or guess how this lawsuit is going to turn out, but I think the very fact that the mainstream media isn't reporting this lawsuit at all, they're not even reporting that it's existing, that it exists, that it's going on, I think that speaks volumes. I think the DNC is scared to death. And I have said to myself that I would make sure when I talk about the issues with the DNC that I don't say Democrats, because the problem. Here's what I wanted to talk about before on Sunday before the unfortunate car accident, because I was actually thinking of this on my way home to my hometown to visit my grandmother for Mother's Day. I think Democratic Party members, Democratic Party voters are very much like neglected children, right? You know how in a bad marriage, there's an abusive father, and then there's a mother who might be self-absorbed, and she's neglectful, and she's narcissistic, and she's the only thing she cares about is herself. And if those two people have children, then they have children who are really misinformed, they're brainwashed, they can't decide which parent is worse. They know that both parents are bad, but they have to go between deciding, periods of deciding, all right, I'm going to deal with this parent because this parent's not treating me like absolute crap right now, and that parent is. And then they go back when the parent they felt a little bit less abused by starts to ramp up their abuse, and then they go over to the parent who's being sort of human for a little while. That's what Democratic Party voters are like to me. I mean, they're like children in an abusive relationship between an obviously physically abusive and hateful father. Let's call that father the GOP. And a self-centered, neglectful, money-hungry, a gold-digging, narcissistic mother. Let's call mom the DNC. So I was thinking this as I was driving home, right? So while dad obviously doesn't really care for the kids, dad didn't even want the kids. right? Dad is like, these kids, I got to pay for these things. They're a bunch of crumb snatchers, and they're keeping me from enjoying all of my wealth. But then some of the kids actually start to excel through no fault of their own. It's just their talent. So then dad starts to pay attention to the really talented A-list kids, and dad starts to use the A-list kids as like an example to shame the rest of the kids. Why aren't the rest of you like these two? If you two would just, if the rest of you would just work hard like these two, the rest of you would be all right. But the rest of y'all's problem is that you're lazy. You know how the GOP is. The GOP is the obviously hateful and abusive dad. And you would think that mom would take up the slack and step into the void and be comforting and nurturing and supportive of the kids in light of dad's abuse, in light of his psychological abuse, his physical abuse, his withholding of support. But no, mom is only concerned about herself, what she can get. Mom is only concerned about whether dad is going to let her have the credit card so she can go buy nice things. And even though she knows that dad mistreats you, she doesn't really want to help you by stopping dad's mistreatment. She doesn't want to divorce him, right? She doesn't want to get out of the relationship with abusive dad. She just wants to make sure that you stop complaining enough so that she can continue to get the stuff she wants. So when she pays attention to you, it's only to placate you so that she can smooth things over with dad so that the two of them can make a deal so they can go out and have the fun that they want. And you're still sitting there waiting for what I thought mom was going to help me out here. I know dad's a jerk, but I thought mom was going to help me. I thought she was going to be supportive. I thought she was going to be nurturing. No, mom is out partying with her friends with dad's credit card because that's the deal they made. The DNC is like a neglectful, narcissistic mom. They don't care about their voters. They don't care about the issues their voters live with every day, especially working class voters. This is why the DNC politicians always talk about the middle class. They don't care about working class people. The DNC stopped being concerned about working class and poor people right around Jimmy Carter. I know Jimmy Carter is one of y'all's favorite presidents. I know. He was one of mine too until I started doing some research about Jimmy Carter and his policies. And if you want to know more about that, you're going to have to tune in to Brick by Brick with Jacqueline Luqman tomorrow night at 9 p.m. And I will tell you why I just said that. But the DNC is just as dysfunctional a parent in this political family as the GOP is. The DNC is just dysfunctional and neglectful and abusive in a more passive kind of way. The GOP, as the brutal father, they're just obvious with it. They're just going to come right out and say, well, look, older people should pay more for insurance premiums because they're old and they're sick. I mean, they're just going to come right out and say it. But the DNC will say things like, well, look, single payer is never going to happen in this country. So what we have to do is incrementally work toward a better system of health care. That's the kind of I don't care about you, that your needs are not being met crap that the DNC says. That's what they have been saying. And Democratic voters, many of them are brainwashed into believing that the DNC is not as bad as the GOP simply because the DNC isn't as blatant with their hatred of working Americans as the GOP is. But it's the same thing. They're saying the same things, just with different, nicer, more pleasant sounding words. And the outcome for the kids in the dysfunctional family, into this dysfunctional political family, us kids, we just get screwed. We are on our own. We have been taking care of ourselves. We're left with we're thinking that Democratic mom is at least going to cook us a hot meal, and she leaves us oodles and noodles, and only 2 packs at that, and there are 5 of us. So I mean, we've got to make sure that we're not demonizing every Democratic voter. Now, I'm not talking about the ones who are so pro-Clinton that they'll demonize you. No, I'm sorry. I'm all for clapping back at those folks. Because, I mean, if people won't listen to facts and reason and logic, then, I mean, what can you do? But I had said that I wanted to make sure that when I talk about these issues with the Democratic Party, that I talk about it from the perspective of this is the problem with the Democratic Party. Because the Democratic Party has brainwashed its members into thinking that they're better than the GOP simply because they're not the GOP. And most of the Democratic Party membership that's not middle class, that's not upper class, who don't have good, quote unquote, good jobs, who aren't college educated and who can't afford to go to college, those people have been left out. They've been left behind by the DNC. And to continue on with this Russia narrative, it's Russia's fault that Clinton lost and Trump won. No, it is the DNC's fault. It is the Democratic Party's fault for leaving American workers to the avaricious and hateful and spiteful devices of the GOP. Not fighting for and standing up for American workers. That's why Hillary Clinton lost. That's why the Democratic Party couldn't muster up the support to get over 30% of registered Democrats out of their houses to vote last year. So please, I just, and then with this whole Russia narrative, it annoys me to no end. I cannot even explain the level of annoyance that I have with people who are just beside themselves, outraged that Russia is hacking our democracy and they're destroying our democracy, blah, blah, blah. But it was the United States government under Bill Clinton, ironically enough, that was directly involved in the campaign to elect Boris Yeltsin in Russia in 1996. And this was after Boris Yeltsin, this was Yeltsin's second term. And the reason the United States got involved was because within the Russian government, there was a faction of Russians who didn't like Yeltsin's pro-capitalist, pro-Western policies. So they started to push back. And it was a coalition of communists and socialists and a whole bunch of other ists that the United States government didn't want leading Russia. So the United States government, through the State Department, excuse me, and certain campaign managers from the Clinton campaign, constructed an election campaign that swayed public opinion in Russia from people absolutely hating Boris Yeltsin. Boris Yeltsin ordered the Russian army to send tanks to Parliament and fire on Parliament to kill members of his resistance. Members of Bill Clinton's campaign team devised a campaign strategy that swayed public opinion in Russia about Boris Yeltsin after that. So please, I need to calm down. I need to calm down. So please, all this talk about, all this anger and frustration, and oh my God, we need to do something about Russia hacking our democracy. Even if that were true, my response would be, it is just the chickens coming home to roost. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Turnabout is fair play. Karma is a bitch, ain't it? The United States has been interfering in the elections, the political processes, the democratic processes of countries around the world for decades. For any American, and I mean every single letter of this, for any American to be outraged and to demand that some people get fired and some investigation needs to be had and something needs to be done and sanctions need to be done against anybody for Russia possibly having any kind of involvement in this election, you're a moron. And I refrain from calling people names on our show, but I just had to say it because I'm tired of it. You are a moron. You are ignorant of political history. You are horribly brainwashed to the point where you actually believe that. Here's the thing that's amazing to me. People believe that the emails that they think Russia leaked to WikiLeaks caused people to change their opinion of Hillary Clinton to the point where they hated her so much that they voted for Donald Trump. But the same people don't believe that anything we said was in the emails actually point to Hillary Clinton not being suitable for president. But these are the same people, the exact same people, who were calling Sanders supporters names, who told us that we were pie in the sky, who told us that we want free things. And when we started pointing out the rigging of the primaries, we were lying, we're delusional, we're sore losers, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I'll be a sore loser, but at least I'm not a freaking ignorant moron. Okay, let me move on to the next topic. I see a bunch of other people joined. Hi, Brandon. Thank you very much for joining. Hey, Forrest. Thanks for joining. I saw Demetrius. Yeah, I did. Thanks, Demetrius. Hey, how you doing? You're right. Carter was a sellout, and I'm serious. I don't. When I talk about people's legacy and their policy, please don't take it personally. I'm trying to bust your bubble about your favorite politician. You need to understand that our problem in this country with our government, with our government officials, with our policies, it doesn't have anything to do with whether you like people or not. It has everything to do with the fact that most of these people are personally invested in ensuring that neoliberalism survives. Dr. Ajamu Baraka is on a speaking tour right now, and I'm working on getting him on this show or on Brick by Brick, and we're just trying to coordinate his schedule. But he is on a speaking tour right now, and he is speaking on the topic that in order to defeat fascism, you have to defeat neoliberalism. I understand that everybody has their pet issues. I get that. And I'm not saying that these issues aren't important. They absolutely are. What I really want people to understand, and this isn't a popularity thing for me. I don't care if I ever get hundreds of followers or hundreds of viewers. It would be nice. But what I want is for people to understand what the problem is. The problem that undergirds and is the foundation for everything, just about everything we face. And it's not economic policies. It's not It's not only global warming. It's not only education. It's not any of these. It's not veganism or vegetarianism. It is neoliberalism, because it's neoliberalism that creates the policies that makes each of those issues. It's not that politicians don't know that they can find whatever money they want to pay for whatever they want, but it is neoliberalism. It is the ideology of neoliberalism that keeps politicians going after, what can I do to make the most money for me? They know there's plenty of money. They just want it all for themselves. And it goes beyond greed. It goes beyond political corruption. It is an entire ideology that has toppled governments around the world. When it was done in other countries, it was just done much faster, but it's being done here. And in order for us to fix any of that, any of what we're facing, any of what we are all fighting, we have got to understand neoliberalism, because we've been focusing on the GOP for so long. They're the bad guys, that we've let the Democrats skate. And now people are demonizing the Democrats, and they're not paying any attention to the GOP too much. And you don't understand that this isn't about political parties at all. It is about an ideology unto itself that is not beholden to any political party. It isn't reliant on any political ideology. It is only reliant upon keeping the masses needy so that the few can have everything. So, if I keep on talking about that, I'm going to talk about the next show tomorrow night, and I can't do that. You just have to tune in to Brick by Brick with Jacqueline Luqman tomorrow night at 9 p.m. We're going to talk some more about neoliberalism and how Jimmy Carter, our favorite president, advanced neoliberal policies in this country. We blamed Ronald Reagan for so much stuff, and he was guilty for enough, but he wasn't guilty of everything. So, all right, so enough about Russia, enough, because I can't. The whole Russia conversation just makes my head hurt, even more than having my head hurt because I was in a stupid accident. Hey, Kenda, how you doing? Hey, Brown Sanders, thank you for joining me. Thank you. So, I want to talk about this video that I watched. I think it was last week. I follow a lot of different people, and one of the people I really love to watch is Yvette Carnell. I encourage you to go to her YouTube channel. She has primarily a YouTube channel, and she deals specifically with black issues and black politics. Deals a lot with finances, but a lot of stuff really, really insightful, and I really enjoy watching her videos. And another person I enjoy watching sometimes is Dr. Boyce Watkins. He deals a lot with black wealth and finances. Okay, so here's the thing. Dr. Boyce Watkins did this video last week where he basically debunked the wealth gap between black Americans and white Americans, which is fine if that's what he believed. Here's the problem. The reason he said it didn't exist really pissed me off, because it was the most BS reason that I hear from so many bougie middle and upper class black people. I can't. So he said that the wealth gap doesn't exist because the problem that black people have is that instead of us focusing on what we have and just taking care of it, what we're doing is sitting here thinking that what we have is less than what white people have, and that we feel bad about ourselves because of that, and we think we can't do any better. That's, in a nutshell, what he said. I'll provide a link to his video for you so you can see it for yourself. But I'm bringing you into the laundry room of many black Americans now, Luqman Nation members. Let me tell you something. Bougie black people are an enormous problem in the black community. As much as we talk about white supremacy and systemic racism and discrimination and those kind of external barriers that we deal with, it is also very true that some of us, when we get a little piece of change, we act like we don't know what it was like to be broke. And this is the problem I have with people like Dr. Boyce Watkins, who is someone who advances the entrepreneurship idea, this whole idea that all black people need to do. We all need to quit our corporate jobs. We all need to quit our jobs working for the man on the plantation. And we all need to start our own business. Okay, first of all, the lasting legacy of slavery, Jim Crow, separate but equal, discrimination in this country cannot be solved by one solution. I don't care what that solution is. There is no one answer to solve this problem. Second, when I look at this whole entrepreneurship thing, it's not that I have a problem with people owning their own businesses. If you can provide a service to people and you can work for yourself and you can make money, fabulous, do it. Absolutely do it. But here is the issue with this whole all black people need to do is own their own businesses stuff. Because the wealth gap is a real thing, because it actually exists, and it doesn't exist because we feel bad about ourselves because we don't have stuff as nice as the white man. It exists because black people are paid less money on average for the same job than white people. It exists because even with a college degree, black people are twice as likely to be unemployed as white people with a college degree. The wealth gap between black people and white people exists because even when black people own homes, their homes are usually valued at a lower market value than homes in comparable neighborhoods owned by white people. That's been proven. Banks and mortgage companies have been sued by the federal government and by states now. I think a state is suing Wells Fargo for racial discrimination in home loan issuing. The wealth gap exists because black people with good credit and qualifying incomes were still pushed toward subprime loans with higher interest rates. And when the housing bubble collapsed, black people lost more wealth in the housing recession, in the last recession, than any other group of people, and black people are the only group of people who have not recovered. So none of that has happened because we feel bad about ourselves because our stuff ain't as nice as the white man. That's not why the wealth gap exists. And that's not why we discuss the wealth gap. We talk about the wealth gap to point out these injustices that continue to persist in this country when it comes to income, when it comes to education, when it comes to financial services, healthcare, everything. The wealth gap exists because the Freedmen's Bank was basically robbed into non-existence. Freed former slaves with nothing, managed to deposit over a very short period of time millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars into the Freedmen's Bank that was set up to help former slaves save money and develop a financial footing in this country to learn capitalism. That's why it was set up. And what happened to the money, those tens of millions of dollars of those people who had nothing, who scraped together what little they had and were able to establish and maintain the free? Their money was stolen. Our wealth was stolen. Ta-Nehisi Coates does an amazing job recounting the history of the theft of land, of free black people. And on some of that land, venerable institutions exist today. Golf courses, hotels. That land was ours. And it was stolen from us. So the reason we don't have the benefit, redlining. I'm sorry, let me not forget that. The wealth gap in this country exists because of redlining. I'm sorry, I have to make sure, let me not forget that. There we go. I have to make sure I can see you guys' comments while the videos, my phone is overheating. It's always some tech thing. So, I mean, the wealth gap in this country between black and white exists because during the suburban housing boom, when the suburbs were being built, and the FHA, the Federal Housing Authority, was funding mortgages. They were guaranteeing mortgages to war veterans coming back, buying these houses. The FHA refused to back mortgages that were taken out by black veterans, black homeowners, or black loan seekers, and they refused to back mortgage loans that were for homes that were in neighborhoods where black people lived. So black people didn't have the benefit of home ownership that was afforded during the housing boom when the suburbs were built. The wealth gap exists because of that, because it was intentionally created. So when we talk about the wealth gap, Dr. Boyce Watkins, we're not talking about it because we feel so bad about ourselves because we don't have things that are as nice as the white people's. No, we talk about it because we are pointing out the injustices that we continue to face today. So, so there's this beef, I guess, going on between Yvette Carnell and Dr. Boyce Watkins, because Yvette Carnell's argument is obviously that Watkins is a little bit off his rocker with this. And he's off his rocker with this idea because in order for people to benefit from financial literacy, because that's Dr. Boyce Watkins' whole thing, and that is the mantra of a lot of black people I know quite a few of them actually, who believe that all black people need to do is own a business and then we'll all, benefit from all of this great wealth. Well, here's the thing. Financial literacy is great when you don't have to decide between whether you're going to pay your rent or whether you're going to eat for the rest of the week. I don't, and it blows my mind how so many black people who don't live that life, right, who aren't poor, who aren't having to make the decision between, do I take this paycheck and put most of it aside to pay my rent for this month, or do I put food in the refrigerator because there is none? So you've got a whole bunch of black people celebrating what Boyce Watkins is saying, and they're basically saying that the reason poor black people are poor is because they just don't want anything better and they're psychologically damaged, completely ignoring all of the systemic institutional injustices that have been committed against them. And I'm looking at the comments. Hey, Debbie Steele, you're right. All of the land was stolen from Native Americans, all of it. So technically, all of it really belongs to them. You're absolutely right. Not going to argue with you. I'm sorry, Nessa. I don't want you to lose me. So when middle class black people act as if the only problem that poor black people have is their mindset, all that does is feed the beast of white supremacy, because that causes middle class black people not to care about what poor black people go through. Listen, I am not the only person to have ever felt like this. One of my absolute heroes, Paul Robeson, actually talks about this in his book, Here I Stand. Excuse me, I encourage you to read it. Paul Robeson was working so hard for the rights of black workers, of black working class and black poor people. Excuse me, the porters, the maids, you know, the washerwomen. And he thought that he would be able to enlist the help of the more educated middle class black people, the talented tenth. But what Robeson found was that the so-called talented tenth didn't really care about the plight of poor black people. And this is why, years later, even W.E.B. Du Bois, who came up with the talented tenth theory, the talented tenth idea, that it was the educated middle-class black people who should take the responsibility to lift the rest of the race up, he even abandoned that because he saw that it wasn't happening, and he saw why. It was classism. That's what I mean when I say bougie black folk. Hey Karen, how you doing? Yeah, that's what I mean when I say bougie black folk. Classism. Black people who, because they don't have to work at a job that's minimum wage or just barely above minimum wage, and they don't have to worry about health insurance because their job is one in which it offers health insurance, health coverage, and they can select from different kind of plans, and they make enough money where they can afford it, or their job is so great that their employer pays for the premiums, most of the premiums, and they pay for only a small little bit. See, you got some people, some black people, not all black people are down for the struggle. And the kind of arguments that people like Dr. Boyce Watkins make when he's talking about the wealth gap doesn't exist, that's just proof to me that all black people are not down for the struggle, and all y'all ain't my friends. And that's really interesting coming from me because I'm middle class myself. I have one of those jobs where I make a pretty good piece of change. Not bad for a chick with a high school diploma. I have one of those jobs where I don't have to worry about health insurance because my job does offer me a selection of plans. And my job does pay for the majority of the premiums, and I can afford the rest of the premium that I pay for. But see, I grew up poor. I grew up poor partially in a rural area, and then I grew up poor partially in the city. So I kind of have that perspective from both worlds. Living on a farm and growing your own food, and living in the city and having to get bread and cheese and peanut butter and milk from the welfare truck. Watching my mother eat toast and drink coffee for days on end, week after week, and asking her, Mommy, aren't you going to eat anything else? And have her tell me, no, honey, I'm on a diet, and I'm too young to realize that the only food that's in the house is in front of me. My mom sewing all of our clothes and not making enough money as a GS1 for the Department of Labor to buy fabric so her friend at work would give her fabric that she bought so she could make clothes for me. See, I grew up poor. And I'm not ashamed of it. I actually think the stories that I know from when I grew up, my family grew up with nothing, and how we persevered, it makes me proud of my people. And I don't know anybody, not to say that these people don't exist, I'm sure they probably do. I don't know many people who are sitting there looking at the fact that they are locked out of opportunity, that they're not paid fairly, that they're underemployed even with a college degree. I don't think they're looking at themselves and saying, oh, woe is me, I suck as a human being because I don't have what the white man does. No, what they're saying is, I did everything this society told me I was supposed to do, and I'm still crapped on. Why is that true? And why are you telling me that it's my fault? So this idea that all we need to do is start our own businesses, and then black people will tap into this trillions of dollars of spending power that we have, that's ridiculous. Because let me tell you something. Even middle class black folks like myself, we usually live around poor black people for many of the reasons that I just told you a few minutes ago. So if I were to start my own business, 7.5 times out of 10, most of my clientele will be who? Other black people. And because I live around many poor black people, not all, I also live around a lot of middle class black people, but we're all struggling. So because most of the people I live around are struggling financially, how likely is it that even if I am an entrepreneur, that I will make millions and become financially independent? Not very. I mean, it can happen. But you have to provide a unique service that is universally needed and sought after. And when you look at businesses in general, the success rate of all businesses, all of them, regardless of who starts them and where, the success rate for most businesses, not great. Not great. So I don't understand why people like Boyce Watkins think that entrepreneurship is the path out of poverty for black people. It's not. It can be a path for some of us under certain conditions. But what about the rest of us? What about the rest of us who, like I think Yvette Carnell pointed out, what about the rest of us who can't worry about financial literacy because we have no finances? And it kills me. Here's what kills me too. These same people, these same entrepreneur pimps, that's what I like to call them. I know that's mean, but I'm feeling mean today. These same entrepreneur pimps like to talk about the black people who spend $300-400, the poor black people who spend $300-400 on designer shoes and designer handbags, and if they would just stop spending their money on this bullshit, they would be able to invest their money. Listen, you're living below the poverty line. You make $12,000 a year, if that much. 363 days of your life are miserable. Struggle all the time, every day, struggle. How mad am I going to be at you that you want to indulge one thing in your otherwise pretty bleak life? Is it a responsible purchase to make? Maybe not. But if I didn't want to do anything to help you improve your life on the other 363 days of the year, what right do I have to say anything about what you do with your little piece of change on that one day of the year that you decide you might want some Jordans? Would I do it? No, I wouldn't. But it smacks to me of just more of this respectability, this morality. We all need to be upstanding and make all the right decisions. Nobody makes all the right decisions. Every single one of us is screwed up at some point. And it's bad enough that society beats the hell up and demonizes black people who make mistakes and points and put us on display because of those mistakes as proof of how unworthy we are for respect as human beings. It enrages me when black people do that to other black people. I can't stand the kind of message that the Boyce Watkins of the world push in regard to inequality and poverty among black. I can't stand that crap. These are the same people who say, well, we can't keep waiting for a handout from the government. We don't need reparations. No, middle class black people might not need reparations. I'll be the first person to say, I probably don't need reparations, need them. But poor black people do. They have been left behind by all of us. Still. And for us to make this ridiculous, high-minded, I got mine, so this is how you need to get yours argument, it's obscene. It's so obscene to me. Professor Charles Ogletree, who sadly, very sadly, Professor Charles Ogletree is a giant in the fight for reparations for black people. He made the case that, reparations can take many forms. It can be education. It can be healthcare. It can be different programs. But make no mistake that poor people were left behind. Poor blacks were never helped by any of the legislation that has been passed, allegedly to help black people. And if we really want to be honest, middle class black people ain't doing that great ourselves. Not when our homes are valued at much less than comparable homes in neighborhoods that just happen to be inhabited by white people. That doesn't happen because we feel bad about our homes. That happens because of racism in the marketplace. So, I wish I had the perfect answer for what it's going to take to close the wealth gap. But here's the thing, there is no perfect answer. There isn't one. And I really believe that black people need to stop. Us middle class black folks, and I admit I can be real bougie sometime, but I've never been so bougie. Oh, for those of you who don't know, I just realized. For those of you who don't know, bougie means bourgeois. It's that's, if you didn't know that, now you do. Told you. Laundry room. I can be real bougie sometimes, but I've never been so bougie to think that the way I was able to reach whatever level of success in life that I've reached, that every poor black person just has to do what I did. Because see, the way I got here was during a time when the economy wasn't as bad as it is today. I could get a decent job with a high school diploma back in 1987. Yeah, I could do that back then. You can't do that now. Nobody can get a decent job without an advanced college degree. And like I said, even if you have a college degree, if you're black, you're twice as likely to be unemployed with that degree as a white person with a degree. Also, even if you do get a job, how about this? Even if you're black and you go to college, you get a degree and you get a job, you have more student loan debt than your average white student. Why is that? Because most black parents do not have the money to contribute to their children's college education fund. So black students have to rely more on student loans. So when these black college graduates go into the workplace, they have more student loan debt than your average white student or graduate. This doesn't mean, because I know somebody's going to say it, well, I have $100,000 in student loan debts. Who's going to help me? That doesn't mean that there are not white people with enormous amount of debt. As a group, we're not talking about incidental, anecdotal, individual stories. We are talking about as a group. And this is why I can't look at my life and say, well, I was able to make it. Why can't you? And say that to the people who live 3 blocks from here in Section 8 housing. It's not about my individual success. It is about the opportunities that we all have. So regardless of how well I'm making it, knowing full well that all I need to do is lose my job, that is all I need to do, and I am 3 blocks away right with them. And no business that I can start is going to save me. Not unless I start selling my stuff. And I don't mean that. I don't mean that. I would never do that. No, I'd never do that. But that thing disturbed me so much. And I'm looking at Brown Sanders starts with accepting and understanding reality. It does. It does. It blows my mind how black people. Yvette Carnell did another video a couple weeks ago. I keep going back and watching it. I encourage you to watch this thing. It's called Black People in Our Imaginary Lives. We hate to admit that we poor. We can't. I mean, Watkins is saying that the reason black people the reason the wealth gap doesn't exist is because black people feel bad about ourselves because we don't have stuff that's as nice as white people. No, that's not it. Black people don't like to admit that we are disadvantaged. That's why you got so many black people running around talking about, I don't need no reparations. Okay, fine, you don't. You're good. You don't need reparations. Fabulous for you. I'm so glad you balling like that. I know people 3 blocks from here who need help. And truth be told, doggone it, I want mine too. Because I know how my family struggled. And didn't have to. I know the obstacles that were placed in front of my family. My mother integrated her high school. That's why you hear so many black people saying that foolishness. We don't need reparations. It's because we don't like to admit that we are disadvantaged. Because we think that says of us that we are victims. Well, here's the thing about justice. Unless you admit that an injustice has been committed against you, you are never going to get justice for it. And when all of these people sit around and realize, oh, well, I quit my job. I stopped working on a plantation and I, started selling this Amway or whatever it is, because it's always a multi-level marketing scheme, right? It's always some company that tells you got to get 10 other people into the company in order for you to make money. It's always some multi-level marketing scheme. And then when they realize that's not going to lift them out of poverty, that's not going to advance them to millionaire status, and they have to go back and get a straight job, then they're angry and they're bitter. But all you have to do is face reality from the beginning. Yes, most of us, many of us are disadvantaged. The system does discriminate against us. It was designed that way. It's not personal. They don't do it because they think that you personally are a bad person. No, it's designed to keep all of us disenfranchised. And different groups of people at different levels, to different degrees too. You have to face the reality of that in order to change that system. Pretending like you're not poor when you are isn't going to change any of that. So, I think I have ranted enough. I sure have. It's been 1 hour and 12 minutes. And so let me see what some of you guys are saying. Let me see if I can before I hop on. Let's hop off. Let's see. Let me see if I can open this and get the comments to scroll, because my phone is, like I said, my phone's overheating. Oh, here we go. Okay. Morgana, hey, thank you for joining me. Kimmery Lawrence, thanks for joining. Hey, Brown again. Yes, Brown, Breaking Brown. Thank you. That's Yvette Carnell's channel. Thank you for reminding me of that, because I couldn't remember what the name of the channel is, but it's Breaking Brown. And I will give you all the links to all of this stuff that I talked about today. And I thank you guys for joining me. So I am going to go. And hey, Michelle Novello. Michelle, are you late again? Because I'm about to end. But you can watch this video in its entirety on this channel later on. Again, if you want to learn about Jimmy Carter's contribution to neoliberal policies in this country, before Ronald Reagan, join me tomorrow night on Brick by Brick with Jacqueline Luqman at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Like and share this video, follow this channel, and definitely come over to Brick by Brick and like and share all of our stuff there. I am going to go rest because I'm trying not to be stubborn so I can recuperate completely from being beat up a little bit. Oh, wait, let me see. Kenda, don't bring... Okay, well, you bring your tissues. Does it keep freezing? I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it keeps freezing. I don't know what that issue is. I've got a clear signal here. I'm glad you appreciated my rant, Kenda. Thank you very much. I had to get it off my chest. Avocados and iPhones, Aaron? Karen said we had stale bread with coffee poured over for a minute. Oh, my grandfather used to do that. I remember that. Yeah, I shudder to think of that bitter taste in my mouth. Yep, yeah. So, thank you all very much for joining me. You all have a great evening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.